busted. Oh.
Clark, what's wrong? Honey? It's bigger than you expected? Smaller?
This isn't the biggest bag over the head punch in the face I ever got. God damn it!
Oh, is that a mockingbird?
Is that a mockingbird? Is that a mockingbird?
If I was half the man Bert Spartan is, I probably wouldn't have to sniff my sister's underwear while masturbating furiously.
You don't have to go to hell. You're in hell. This is hell. This is hell. This is hell.
Because democracy basically means government by the people, of the people, for the people. But the people are retarded.
Then strangled them, and finally dismembered their bodies.
Right.
Then
Available.
and homelessness and all that.
And now, the voice you've been waiting for.
There is a secret song at the center of the world, and its sound is like razors through flesh. I'm here to turn up the volume.
I'm kind of retarded.
I want to say up front that I haven't used TikTok in years. I was on there for about 5 minutes, but it was like every time I got on there, I could actually feel myself losing brain cells, like somebody whacked me in the face with the retard stick. So when TikTok went dark on Saturday night ahead of that Sunday deadline, I actually found out about it from people posting screenshots on X. And my first thought was, I love how they added the, "We're fortunate that President Trump has indicated that he will work with us on a solution to reinstate TikTok once he takes office. Please stay tuned."
Brilliant! Brilliant!
And then my second thought was, cue the freakouts in 3, 2... And in addition to the crying, there was some good old-fashioned temper tantrums. I'm not sure if this is true or not, but I was seeing people reporting that you had teenagers and shit actually calling 911 because their fucking TikTok wasn't working. Just imagine what would happen if the entire internet went down for a mere week. But then, of course, there were others who reacted more like... But I'm just watching this really not giving a shit one way or the other. It's like watching a football game where you really honestly don't care who wins. You're really not hoping for any kind of particular outcome, so you can just kind of watch, observe, and enjoy the entertainment. And as for all that, oh, well, they're collecting data for the Chinese government, as opposed to YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram just collecting all that data and turning around and selling it to the Chinese government, you're telling me there's really a fucking difference. And on the news, they kept talking about their magic algorithm, and that's what really makes them different. I don't really think the algorithm is all that different between Instagram and the Facebook Reels and the YouTube Shorts. The two things that do make TikTok more unique is there's a lot of topics you're allowed to talk about on there that are big no-nos other places. The other is that it's actually easier for pure content creators to make money, whereas on something like Instagram, you might be able to make money if you already have a business and you're using Instagram as a form of advertising, but to be able to make money purely off of being a content creator, you can make all kinds of little videos and post them on Facebook Reels, and then you know what you get?
You get nothing!
So I understand why a lot of people are pissed off, but then Sunday, before Trump even gets sworn in, he just puts out a statement saying, hey, you guys should reinstate it, we're gonna work something out, don't worry. And boom, it's back. Sure, I got a few little chuckles out of this, but really this is like 90% just political theater, and the same could be said for these early cabinet nomination hearings. There was very few of these hearings that really interested me. I watched a little bit of the Pam Bondi and Kristi Noem ones, but the only one I was really interested in so far was the Pete Hegseth, and not because I thought it was really going to be anything of substance, I just figured it would be pretty entertaining. For those of you that didn't have the time or the inclination to watch it, it basically went like this.
Do not deny that you made those statements you have. We take the responsibility of standards very seriously, and we will work with you. I'm equally distressed. You would not meet with me before this hearing. We could have covered...
Not even joking about that. Their gotcha questions were weak as hell, and they all kind of came off like a pack of hyenas.
Yes, veterans organizations that will help our veterans get every damn thing that they deserve because they signed on the dotted line to keep us safe. Just like
You people make my ass twitch.
But again, very little substance. The hearings I'm really waiting for haven't even been scheduled. I'll probably watch the Tulsi one. I'm definitely going to be watching the Kash Patel hearing. But the one I really can't wait for is RFK Jr. The people that are going to be attacking him are idiots. And say what you want about RFK Jr., that motherfucker knows his shit, and it's going to be a real game of intellectual fuck around and find out. And that reminds me, did you hear about how the fucking douchebag administration decided they're gonna ban red dye number 3 in foods? The funny thing about this being it got banned from cosmetics 35 years ago because they found it to be a cancer-causing agent, but they left it in foods and drinks until just now. And not even really just now, they're saying, oh, well, you guys have 2 years to stop using it. Plus, this is just one of dozens and dozens of different food additives that are banned in other countries because of all the research showing how detrimental they are to human health. So why this and why now? It's almost like they want some little token example for them to say, what do you mean? We care about the American people's health. And then you've also got other people already jumping on the bandwagon, getting ahead of the curve, like Steak and Shake, saying they're going to move to 100% beef tallow to fry their foods. These are very positive developments. I mean, it tastes better, and it has the added benefit of not being fucking poison. Of course, it wasn't all positive news. There were some stories that were quite concerning, and I'll get to those in a minute. But this next one I would categorize as a mixed bag. I'm talking about James O'Keefe striking again, catching yet another political operative on tape, saying incriminating shit to someone they just met, bragging about how he's working with retired generals and admirals to try to undermine the President of the United States.
What's your, overall assessment of Trump?
He's a sociopathic narcissist who is only interested in advancing his name, his wealth, and his fame.
Is there anything you can do to, protect American people from stuff that he might try to do?
I'm in conversation with a couple of retired generals to try to explore what we can do.
And one thing about this that's actually comforting is that the deep state forces that are plotting to undermine Trump are working with somebody this fucking retarded. I mean, this is a top-level guy giving briefings to the Joint Staff. Well, he was. Once this story broke, it took about 8 seconds for the Pentagon to fire his fucking ass. But this idiot is sitting there bragging about how he was a spy hunter.
So I became a spy hunter.
To a civilian who is catching him in an undercover sting.
Very sensitive information. We're gonna have to keep it between us.
What a moron. And probably the only thing he was a little bit smart about was when he started talking about AI and quantum computing, because he sits there and says that quantum computing doesn't exist yet, but it will soon, which is bullshit. It fucking exists. It's just some highly classified DARPA shit that the military-industrial complex wants to keep just amongst themselves for as long as possible. Or, then again, maybe he is such an idiot that he doesn't even realize that it fucking exists already. Who knows? And I got a pretty good laugh when he started talking about Pete Hegseth.
He's also cheated. He's been married 3 times.
Oh, no.
He's cheated on all of his wives, all of his girlfriends. He's had some sexual assault allegations.
What?
Yep. This is all in the news, yeah.
Do you know why this is so funny to me? Because he's sitting there talking shit about, oh, this guy cheated on all his wives and girlfriends. Meanwhile, just over 3 years ago, this guy got caught in another undercover civilian sting. But that time it was by predator hunters. And they caught him coming over to meet up with what he thought was an underage girl. So for him to sit there and be like, this guy's so awful, he cheated on his wives and girlfriends.
Oh, the irony! It's too much!
And it's doubly funny because that means that in just over 3 years, this spy hunter got caught in 2 different undercover civilian stings, put together by just regular-ass Joe Schmoes. Much more concerning to me was this story that came out of Chicago.
I had the master key, and I went in there, and I came across a lot of things, and I was like, that don't seem right. Came across some C4, some explosives, a rifle, a lot of fake IDs, a lot of fireman stuff, a lot of police force stuff, and it just looked like it was fake, you know?
Of course, the Chicago Police Department, known for their openness, honesty, and transparency, came out almost immediately and said, don't worry, nothing to be alarmed about. The materials posed no threat.
That's garbage.
Now, to a lot of people, those words might make you think that it wasn't real C4, but that doesn't make much sense. I mean, you've got police and fire gear, a rifle, ammunition, fake IDs, and fake C4? But the thing about C4 is, until it's rigged up with a blasting cap, it is very stable and very safe. It has to be set off with a secondary explosion. You could throw it in a bonfire and nothing will happen. So I'm thinking it's entirely possible that they chose their words very carefully in order to downplay the severity of this find. And then there was the story about the Army Reserve base on the southeast side of LA that got broken into. They tried to get into the uniform storage, but luckily couldn't. But they did take 3 Humvees. 2 of them have been recovered, but the one that's armored hasn't. And I suppose it's positive that they took a bunch of machine gun mounts instead of getting to the actual machine guns. But just the fact that you can roll up in an armored Humvee and appear to be legit National Guard is somewhat troubling. And I think all this sort of dovetails with Christopher Wray right before he's stepping down and resigning in the "you can't fire me, I quit" fashion, warning that, oh yeah, we face a lot of major threats. We've got all these terrorists that got in the country and they're unaccounted for, and we should probably brace for some attacks. And then he also mentioned how the Chinese have gained access into our critical infrastructure and are basically embedded in there and all set for when they decide to make a move. And mind you, this is coming from the guy who's been the FBI director for more than 7 years.
What would you say you do here?
Something else that caused a whole lot of concern to a whole lot of people was Bill Gates coming out and saying that he had met with Trump and they had this really good long talk over dinner and talking like he's going to be working with him. And I fully understand why this is troublesome to a lot of people, but with somebody like RFK Jr. in Trump's ear lately, I don't think there's any way that Trump doesn't realize what this asshole represents. Personally, I think this is more of a sizing somebody up kind of situation and keeping your enemies closer. There would be absolutely no strategic value in just refusing to meet with somebody like him. So let's all calm our tits and wait to see what actually happens.
Right?
Right.
And in what might seem like a little bit of a tangent, but bear with me, I've been thinking a lot lately about Tesla. Not the car company, the man. And he was the man. And I'd been thinking about him recently because of all the scuttlebutt of hidden technologies and drones and UFOs, UAPs and gravitic propulsion. And then I came home from work on Wednesday night and there just so happened to be a little marathon of a show called The Tesla Files on. I caught the end of the first episode, and really it was a mini-series because it was only 5 episodes. But by episode 2, they really started pissing me off. It was one of those things where people pretend like they're doing a deep dive while they're really only barely scratching the surface. I mean, they spent half of the second episode out in Colorado Springs doing little experiments trying to prove that Tesla's design for generating wireless electricity actually works.
Wait, what?
As if that's in fucking question. In 1893, before he even went out to Colorado Springs, he lit up the World's Fair in Chicago with wireless lighting, more bulbs than the entire rest of Chicago combined. And he did demonstrations standing there on stage holding up a light bulb and it getting powered wirelessly through the air from a Tesla coil. And as they're using their little Tesla coil to light up light bulbs and power a remote control boat wirelessly, they had a little voiceover doing a disclaimer on how they had to stand outside of the arc of the Tesla coil because it's such high voltage that they could get electrocuted and killed if they stood within the arc. But then at other times they flashed this picture showing that apparently you guys ain't using the same kind of Tesla coil. You guys are using some kind of Kmart Tesla coil because Tesla would stand inside that arc all the time and didn't get electrocuted. This show was such a whitewash. At different times throughout the series, they actually kind of were like, oh wow, it's almost like he was erased from history.
Well, no fucking shit.
Not almost. He was very purposely and deliberately erased from history. In school, you learn all about Thomas Edison and Einstein and what great inventors they were, and you don't learn shit about Tesla. I'm sure that has nothing to do with the fact that his goal was to provide electricity to the world for free. In 1901, he got money from J.P. Morgan to build his Wardenclyffe Tower on Long Island, and it was supposed to just be a communications tower to relay messages across the Atlantic between London and New York. But 5 years later, Tesla came to J.P. Morgan and said, yeah, the tower's up, it works, and you know, we could also use this to give power to all of New York City completely wirelessly and free. And J.P. Morgan was like, you get the fuck out of here. and then proceeded to have the newspapers start writing hit pieces, calling him a fraud, saying his inventions don't work. He immediately pulled the funding, evicted him from Wardenclyffe. Well, 2 years after that, in 1908, he started getting financed by John Jacob Astor, presumably to continue on his mission of providing electricity to people wirelessly free of cost. But then just a few years after that, you may recall that John Jacob Astor was one of the 2 anti-Federal Reserve bankers that died when the Titanic went down.
Allegedly!
And it seemed like Tesla had a really hard time finding anybody to finance him afterwards. One of the few parts of this show that I actually found somewhat interesting was when they started talking about his years at the New Yorker Hotel. See, even though he publicly had problems finding anybody to finance another lab for him after this, he wound up living at the New Yorker Hotel for 10 years. And this is a guy who never married, never had any kids, because he was so devoted to his work. And on the show, they found this about 1,000 square foot room up at the top of the tower that very likely might have been his laboratory. And they were saying that it was pretty well known that he had people from the OSS and the FBI that stayed right down the hall from his room. And they started talking about the 80 trunks of his papers and his life's work and how only 60 made it back to his next of kin in Serbia. And they very briefly mentioned that there was, in 2018, declassified documents proved that the FBI did in fact seize that shit and go through it. What they really didn't mention much of is the FBI admitted that, yeah, they kept those 20 trunks, and even though they lied about it for more than 70 years, they said, oh, well, yeah, okay, we did, but we lost them. One thing they did mention that I'd never thought of before was how the Wardenclyffe Tower was almost 200 feet above ground and 300 feet below ground. He had to drive these long metal rods down into the earth. But with the height of the New Yorker Hotel, it's very possible that he may have been converting it into a giant above-ground Tesla tower. It sure would go a long way to explain why somebody who is so obsessed with work would spend a decade living in a tiny hotel room. And it also made me immediately think of the first Ghostbusters movie.
The structure of this roof cap is exactly like the kind of telemetry tracker that NASA uses to identify dead pulsars in deep space.
Cold riveted girders with cores of pure selenium. I mean, the architect was either a certified genius or an authentic wacko.
But the reason I bring all this up is because with those declassified documents, we now know that the FBI did in fact seize all of his papers and handed them off to a guy named Vannevar Bush. He was the head of MIT and the head of the Manhattan Project, as well as the U.S. Office of Scientific Research and Development for the military. And do you know who he tasked with going through all these papers? An MIT professor named John G. Trump. This would be where Donald Trump got his middle name John from, actually. And he's mentioned his uncle on many occasions, as well as a couple of times talked about technology that's been suppressed. I learned about a lot of this stuff from a guy called Dark Journalist. He puts out some really good information on a wide variety of the more esoteric kind of topics, Atlanteans and the Firestone Crystal to the mystery school stuff and the UFO file and the fake alien threat. And he is very well researched and definitely worth checking out. But he talks a lot about Vannevar Bush and John G. Trump and about how he thinks it's very possible that a lot of these things might be about to come to light. And if he does, that will shake things up in a way that I don't think anybody can really fully appreciate. But I really hope he does it. Sláinte.
All I have in this world is my thoughts and my words, and I don't break them for no one. You understand? So say good night to the bad guy. 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 Come on. Come on.
now.